Hey fabulous people, and welcome to the first movie review of 2019. I'm Linny Fabulous, and I'm going to talk to you today about Ralph Breaks the Internet, the sequel to Wreck-It Ralph. Wreck-It Ralph was a really interesting and clever movie based around basically the Toy Story idea of what if X were alive. In this case, video game characters in their respective video games in an arcade. The follow-up movie, Ralph Breaks the Internet, is regarding what happens when that arcade becomes connected to the internet. But that's not that big of a part of the story. It's more of a plot device than a major thing. Like, it's a coincidence that they're connected to the internet when the thing that moves the plot along occurs. The main point of the plot is that one of the two main characters, Vanellope von Schweetz, is from a game called Sugar Rush Racing, a racing game that has one of the little chairs and steering wheels that you see in arcade games. And unfortunately, when Ralph tries to create a new track to keep Vanellope interested, because Vanellope has mentioned that she's getting bored with her game, the girl playing the game loses control and accidentally breaks the game, and then when the arcade owner tries to fix the game, he breaks it further. And he's going to have to shut down Sugar Rush Racing. And when a game is shut down, then all of the characters that lived in that game become homeless, essentially. They have nowhere to live, their game is unplugged. Well, they find out that there is a steering wheel for sale on eBay, so Ralph and Vanellope decide that the thing to do is to go to eBay and get the steering wheel. That way the game can be fixed and Vanellope's game isn't going to be shut down. So, the overall description I would give, like if someone were to ask me in one phrase how would I describe Ralph Breaks the Internet, I would call it well-meaning but confused. The reason I say that is because they know what they want to do, and they know some of the things that they want to do with it along the way, but then the process of actually telling the story gets kind of muddled in a lot of places. The basic story arc in regards to character progression for our two main characters, because there's really only two as opposed to the original movie where we had 3 or 4, depending on how much you feel Calhoun played in regards to a main character. And anyway, as opposed to it being with Ralph, Vanellope, Felix, and Calhoun as our primary characters are really only Ralph and Vanellope. And they're good characters, and I feel like these characters definitely could carry a movie, but the opening of it made me feel like Felix and Calhoun were going to be more involved than they really were. I definitely thought that they were going to have a very strong side plot, but I'll get back to that later. Ralph's main story arc is he needs to learn to accept that what Vanellope wants for herself isn't necessarily what he wants either for her or for either of them. There's multiple instances where Ralph makes a decision for Vanellope that isn't the decision that Vanellope wants to make. Vanellope wants to go out and do adventurous, dangerous things. She wants something new and exciting, something that she isn't prepared for and doesn't expect, whereas Ralph just wants her to be safe and happy and near him. And he has to learn to accept that she isn't going to want the same things that he wants, and he has to either support her or give up on their friendship. Meanwhile, Vanellope winds up on her own separate story arc, learning to accept herself both as the racer that she fully embraces being and the princess that she tends to ignore. And she has to learn to listen to herself and to her heart to find out what it is she really wants. So, Vanellope winds up through a convoluted series of events in the website Oh My Disney, and she meets all of the Disney princesses, plus Anna, Elsa, and Moana. And She explains that she's also a princess, and after a little cute session where they get new outfits because they like Vanellope's comfy clothes, Ariel starts to burst into song. And Vanellope immediately puts an end to that. She's like, what is happening here? And the princesses explain that when they feel something, they can burst into song and have the musical accompaniment, and it helps them know what they want. And Vanellope decides to give it a try and tries to sing about how she wants a steering wheel. But it doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work, it turns out, isn't because she's a bad singer, but it's because she doesn't really want a steering wheel. She wants something new and exciting and dangerous that she can't predict. And they found that in a previous game, a very dangerous racing game called Slaughter Race. And that's what she wants. She wants Slaughter Race. She wants to not know what's coming, to be somewhere new, to be somewhere exciting and invigorating that is always giving her a new obstacle, a new challenge, something that she doesn't just know already. But she realizes, through a very clever little song that I really enjoyed, that not only is Slaughter Race what she wants, but it's not what Ralph wants for her. So she has to figure out for herself if she wants to walk away from the life she has to get the life that she wants. It's a very interesting concept, but I don't think it's executed very well, because the movie can't quite decide if they want Vanellope to be the main character or if they want Ralph to be the main character. And it results in a few missteps. But before I get to that, I'm going to talk about the good things of the movie. The character arcs are interesting, and the characters are just as lovable as they were in the original. I still enjoyed them anyway. Especially Vanellope having to deal with the fact that people have certain expectations for a princess that she doesn't really fit. And then the new characters that they introduce are, for the most part, good. Like, I enjoyed Yes. There's a character named Yes who I really enjoyed. And I enjoyed Shank a lot, and I also really enjoyed the fact that there is now a Disney character named Shank. So, that's nice. I enjoyed those two characters. The others, meh. There was, like, a pop-up guy named Spamley, who wasn't a bad character, but I feel like he was a major distraction from the main continuity of the plot. Like, he was the catalyst for them going to Slaughter Race originally, and he was later on an important character in regards to helping Ralph get a virus. But I feel like that's the only reason his character existed was for those two plot lines. Which, fair, you needed something to, like, get you to those plot points and help progress the story along, but I just feel like they lingered with Spamley for too long. Maybe made a couple of jokes that they didn't really need, spent too much time in his creepy little warehouse office. He's not a bad character, but he got too much screen time. And the same can be said for their, like, I can't remember his name. Their, like, Ask Jeeves knockoff. He's also not a bad character, but I think they spent too much time with him and made a couple of jokes that were really unnecessary and just took up too much screen time. And as much as I enjoyed the segment with the princesses, and I really enjoyed the segment with the princesses, I have an unmitigated amount of love for the Disney princesses. That also kind of dragged on. The entire scene where she was in Oh My Disney took a while. And I know why they put the scene in there. I know the multiple reasons why they put the scene in there. One thing was for fan service. Another thing was to give them a new line of things that they could sell based around these very marketable characters. And then there was also the plot points of giving a reason for Vanellope to be a little more introspective in herself. Like, the princesses take the time to explain, well, sometimes when we need help figuring out what we want, we stare at water. Which it was great that they, like, acknowledged that that's a thing that they do. And Vanellope is immensely confused, and they clarify, important water. You stare at important water, and it helps you figure out what you want. For instance, and the instances that they actually gave were Moana and the ocean, and Snow White and her wishing well. Like, I appreciated that they acknowledged that that's a thing that they do. But I do feel like they spent a little bit too much time in the princess room with the princesses. I feel like if they had cut a little bit out, like I know it's cute, but the big questioning moment of what kind of a princess are you? That dragged on a while. It was cute and I enjoyed it, but I feel like that should have just been a trailer scene, like a scene that they just had in the trailers and wasn't actually in the movie, which is a thing they make a pun about for, like, an end credit scene, which was cute and I appreciate, but, like, it dragged on. There was poor pacing in this movie, kind of like there's poor pacing in this video, but there was poor pacing in this movie. And that's really, like, the bad of it. The good were the characters and a lot of the jokes, and the basic idea, the basic concept was good, and the heart of it was good. The bad were the jokes that dragged on too long, and the plot being muddled and jumping back and forth with different ideas. So now we get to the ugly. And the first thing that comes to mind is the overwhelming amount of product placement. I know Wreck-It Ralph had a fair amount of product placement too, such as Sonic and Tappers. But those were things that we expected, and they weren't too much, and all of the important characters were from original games and ideas. Like, Fix-It Felix Jr. was an original game. Sugar Rush Racing was an original game. Hero's Duty was an original game. None of our primary settings or characters were from things that were knocked off of other things. Whereas in Ralph Breaks the Internet, almost everything is a knockoff. Like, yes, there were the original characters, but still almost everything is a knockoff. It takes place, part of it, on the website Oh My Disney. It also, like, makes references to YouTube and the video streaming service that they actually use is BuzzTube instead of YouTube. Like, you guys, you could have come up with something else. It didn't have to be a knockoff, and it didn't have to remind people of other things. I know you might say, well, maybe they just wanted the BuzzTube name so they could make the bee pun later. Maybe, but did they have to write the name of the website in the exact same font and the exact same color as what BuzzFeed uses? Did you? And other than that, there were plot lines that were just forgotten about, I feel like. Like, in the beginning, when the characters from Sugar Rush Racing are finding new homes, it turns out that the only characters that they're really having trouble getting homes for are the 15 or so other racing characters besides Vanellope. So, Fix-It Felix and Sergeant Calhoun decide that they're just gonna adopt all of them. And that's it. You see one scene of the characters destroying their living room, and then we don't see them again until the end of the movie. Like, we find out at the end of the movie, oh, somehow they did a great job with all those kids. And they make a little pun about it where Calhoun and Felix are listing the reasons, like, this is how you're a great parent. But they're in Sugar Rush Racing while the race is going on and the kids keep driving by, so you don't hear any of it. And yeah, that's kind of a funny pun, but that's been done so many times, and frankly, I would have loved to have, like, an ongoing side plot where we looked back in on Felix and Calhoun and watched these two very different characters struggling to parent all of these high-energy, different kids, because the characters of Sugar Rush Racing, we know from the original movie, can be pretty bratty and kind of awful sometimes. And I would have loved to see Mr. Sunshine and Rainbow's Fix-It Feel-It Jr. try to deal with that. And I also would have loved to see Tough as Nails Sergeant Calhoun try to deal with that, and see them try to deal with what would be conflicting parenting styles. We know from the movie that they've been married for 6 years. They've got something going for them in regards to how they work as a team. I would have liked to see them trying to parent these kids. But we didn't get it. We just get a couple of gags. And other than that, that's really the only major dropped plot line. There's also the question of what about literally all of the other Sugar Rush characters that are living with other members of the arcade. That's a dropped plot line. And then there's the question of, like, the character that they introduce for Ralph to get the virus from. How does he react when the virus then breaks out? They don't tell us that. They don't show us that. We get none of it. I know I've been kind of, like, ragging on the Ralph sequel for a while now. Please don't bite me, princess. But it is good, and I did enjoy it. It was just kind of flat in a lot of areas. I would still recommend going to see it, but don't be super hyped for it. If you want to enjoy it, don't expect much of it. Anyway, I'm glad you guys took the time to listen to me. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you guys stay fabulous.